walked in like he was expecting applause. Not even a full day after the board announced the CEO's temporary leave of absence, which everyone knew was code for heart attack while golfing with the CFO's wife. And here comes his son, Brandon, strutting through the glass doors like he invented capitalism. Tan too perfect for Ohio. Watch too loud for someone who's never set foot in a loading dock. He looked around the office with this bored arrogance, like he was shopping for things to fire. And that's when he stopped in front of my desk. Not reception, my desk. Middle of ops, no clipboard guy. Just me, 2 monitors, and a half-eaten egg sandwich. You're the guy who runs logistics, he asked, frowning like the word logistics had personally offended him. I leaned back, slow. I am logistics. He laughed. One of those quiet, condescending chuckles like I was a child playing CEO with my daddy's necktie. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. We all knew who he was. Brandon Whitmore, Wharton dropout, social media crypto bro, once got sued for calling a barista-servant class on TikTok. And now, he was technically my boss. Without even glancing at my screen, he muttered, "We don't keep lazy people here," and walked off before I could even swallow my rage. Or my sandwich. The office went silent. You could have heard the ficus die a second time. Here's the part that he didn't know, that desk he insulted. It's where I rebuilt the company's entire distribution protocol after a hurricane leveled our southern hub. I personally negotiated our UPS bulk rate contract during a labor strike. I've worked 18 Christmas Eves in a row without asking for overtime. And for the past 6 years, every executive-level decision that's touched the warehouse floor has quietly gone through me. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. I stood up, shut my laptop, and started packing. No panic, no anger, just surgical calm. Took my mug, my backup drive, my NDA-protected field notes on a supply reroute project worth $1.3 million in savings next fiscal. Brandon watched from the corner with this smug little victory smirk, probably already rehearsing how he'd phrase it in an Instagram story. I walked out. But before I cleared the lobby, I paused by the security desk, handed Marcus, the overnight guy, a sealed envelope and said, "Make sure this gets to Charles Whitmore directly." Not his assistant, him. Then I left without another word. What was in the envelope? Oh, just a certified printout of Clause 7.4.13 from my executive retention agreement, signed, initialed, and notarized by Daddy Whitmore himself in 2017. And a note, handwritten. Just 4 words, "You fired who exactly?" Tomorrow was going to be loud. Charles Whitmore, the real CEO, wasn't the type to scream. Not unless something was bleeding money or sleeping with his wife. But that morning, just after 7 o'clock a.m., before his cardiologist even cleared him to return, stormed into HQ with a silk tie half-tied and a blood pressure cuff still dangling from his wrist like a fashion accessory. I wasn't there to see it, of course. I was at home, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug with a satisfaction that should have been illegal. But my phone lit up like a Christmas tree in a meth trailer. First it was Marcus, security. Bro, he's here. Your guy just walked in screaming like someone put nails in his colon. And it was Celia from accounting. Tell me this is some kind of Ocean's 11 revenge thing, because Charles just asked if Brandon had brain damage or a vendetta. And finally, Susan from legal, who hates calling people. He opened the envelope in front of the whole board, read the clause out loud, turned the color of a wet ham, then said, "We owe him how much?" I think someone actually Googled defibrillator protocol. See, Clause 7.4.13 wasn't just severance. It was a panic parachute. Back when I saved their asses during a 6-month customs backlog, they'd offered me a bonus. I said no thanks, give me job security with teeth. So they did, buried in fine print. If I was terminated without cause by anyone other than Charles, I got 3-year salary paid in 48 hours, 20% annual bonus, front-loaded, lifetime dental. And here's the kicker, a non-compete release, meaning I could walk straight into any competitor and hand them my playbook. And I had offers. Oh, I had offers. Back at HQ, Brandon tried to spin it. Said I was underperforming, didn't show initiative, even claimed I threatened him with a stapler. But Charles just stared at him like he was trying to remember what condoms cost in 1996. Fired the only person keeping our shipping schedule tighter than your Botox appointments, he growled. Then came the bomb nobody saw coming. Charles didn't just overturn the firing. He fired Brandon. Right there on the mezzanine, in full view of the operations staff, Charles pointed a liver-spotted finger and said, "You're not ready. You treat this company like it's a hobby. Get out." HR tried to intervene. Brandon's face went white, then red, then green. Looked around like someone was going to start clapping. No one did. Charles turned to Marcus and said, "Escort my son off the property. Don't let him touch anything." Now that was poetic. But don't think this is where it ends. Because what Charles didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that Brandon had already made one move before his little warehouse stunt. And that move was about to light the entire company on fire. The first explosion wasn't literal. It may as well have been. 8:42 a.m., same damn timestamp as the moment Brandon fired me the day before. The warehouse floor screens glitched, just for a second. Then every shipping route, every invoice, every truck log gone. At first they thought it was a system update, then maybe ransomware. By 9:03 a.m., someone from IT found the trail, a permissions change initiated the night before. By Brandon's login, revoked half the warehouse admin accounts, rewired the export logs to redirect through a third-party data filter based in, get this, Austin, Texas, and had even initiated a data purge protocol scheduled to go live Friday at midnight. The man set a ticking self-destruct. And it gets better. The Austin address belonged to a shell company, registered under the name B. Whitmore Consulting. Translation: Brandon tried to steal the logistics infrastructure out from under Daddy and sell it back as a third-party vendor. He wasn't stupid. He was desperate. See, turns out Brandon had already blown through his trust fund investing in NFT horses and a streaming app for dog yoga. The consulting front was his way of building something of his own, to prove to Daddy he could be more than a walking Rolex. Only problem, he had no idea how any of it worked. Thought you could yank a 20-year logistics system like a weed and just plug it into Shopify. The man couldn't spell crosstalk, let alone run a quarterly volume forecast. So when he fired me, he assumed I was just a replaceable cog. What he didn't realize, I was the engine. And here's the real kicker. Before I left, I initiated something of my own. Not sabotage, just a little insurance policy. Let's call it the "oh no you didn't" protocol. For years I'd been building a shadow system. Not illegal, not even secret, just better, faster, leaner. I'd mapped alternate shipping routes, optimized vendor chains, and even designed a proprietary algorithm to predict inventory spikes 6 weeks in advance. All off the books, all stored on my cloud server, accessible by one keycard. Mine. So when Susan from legal called again, this time with her voice 2 octaves higher and a whole lot less snark, I gave her the answer she didn't want to hear. "No," I said. "I don't work there anymore. Your problem now." Click. 1 minute later, my inbox dinged. Subject: please reconsider. Charles wants to meet. But by then, I was already sitting across from someone else. A man in a tailored gray suit, competitor, CEO, holding a fountain pen and a blank check, and smiling like he'd just won the Super Bowl without playing a single down. Man across from me looked like money. Not the new kind, tech bros in hoodies and sneakers, but the old kind, quiet Rolex, cufflinks shaped like chess pieces, voice like silk wrapped around a baseball bat. He slid the check across the table without a word. I didn't look at it yet, didn't have to. His eyes already told me he knew everything. He leaned forward. "So," he said, with the kind of smile you pour scotch on, "does it feel watching them choke on the hand that fed them?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. Would have felt better if the kid hadn't been such an amateur. We were in a private lounge downtown. Real mahogany, not that laminate crap from corporate conference rooms. The kind of place where they iron your napkin before you sneeze. His name was Richard Wexler, CEO of Logicor, our biggest competitor, and depending who you ask, the devil with a supply chain. 5 years he'd tried to poach me. And for 5 years I said no. Loyalty, history, maybe even guilt. But after Brandon's stunt, guilt packed its bags and left with my dignity. Wexler steepled his fingers. "You still have access to the auxiliary routing matrix you built?" I smiled. "I built it off the grid. Your servers wouldn't even need retrofitting." He exhaled through his nose, impressed. "You're the only reason Whitmore Global could scale without imploding." Knew it wasn't Charles. I said nothing. That's when he dropped it, the reason he'd called this emergency meeting. "You bring me your system, your brain, your playbook, and I don't just match your Whitmore salary. I triple it, equity, private office. Build your own team. You'll never sit under a 20-something frat ghost again." I looked down at the check. It wasn't blank anymore. It had a number with so many zeros it looked like binary code. But I didn't sign. Not yet. 'Cause see, I had one more play. One more message to send. Not to Charles, not even to Brandon, to the entire goddamn board. So I stood up, slid the check back toward Wexler and said, "Give me 48 hours. Then I walk in with everything." "Everything?" he asked, one brow raised. I nodded. "Not just the system. The people, the routes, the contracts. I've already spoken to 6 of Whitmore's vendors." They're ready to flip. Wexler grinned like a man watching a rival's house catch fire while holding a glass of wine. Oh, this is going to be fun. That night, I didn't sleep, not out of anxiety, out of strategy. While Brandon was probably throwing a tantrum in whatever leased Porsche he hadn't crashed yet, I was on encrypted calls with warehouse leads, old friends, ex-employees, quiet rebels still stuck in Whitmore's rusting machine. And then I sent one message. Just one. Friday. Noon. Conference room B. One-time invitation. By morning, 22 replies, all yes, and one from an anonymous address. Does Charles know yet? He would, in exactly 27 hours, and he was going to wish his heart had given out before he read the agenda. Friday, 11:57 a.m. Conference room B, formerly reserved for quarterly boredom disguised as synergy meetings, was now the most dangerous square footage in the building. Walked in with no badge, no appointment, no smile. Just a manila folder under one arm and a storm under my skin. Inside, 22 people, not just any 22, warehouse leads, regional schedulers, vendor liaisons, drivers with more miles on their boots than Brandon had neurons in his brain, and at the head of the table, an empty chair with a placard someone had written in Sharpie, for the king in exile. They stood when I entered. I didn't ask them to, just did. I took the chair, placed the folder in front of me, didn't open it yet, and that's when the door creaked again. Enter Charles Whitmore, sweat on his brow, anger in his step. Panic hiding just behind the CEO mask. Behind him, legal, HR and Brandon freshly fired but still trailing daddy like a hemorrhoid with Wi-Fi. Charles barked, "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked. He already knew. I didn't stand. I didn't raise my voice. "Agenda's simple," I said, finally opening the folder. Item 1, mass departure. Effective today, 2:00 p.m. These 22 people and myself will resign. Charles's hands clenched the back of a chair like he was trying to strangle upholstery. "You're bluffing." I slid the papers forward, resignation letters, signed and time-stamped. I had notarized mine. Item 2, I continued, is vendor shift. I've spoken to 9 of our top suppliers. As of Monday, be working exclusively with Logie Corps. Brandon scoffed, but the legal rep's face turned pale. That part was very real. Charles stepped forward, voice low now. "You torch everything over him." He motioned to Brandon like he'd accidentally stepped in something. I leaned in, calm. He lit the fire. I just turned it into a controlled burn. HR whispered something to legal. Charles looked like he aged 10 years in one breath. And then, like a man admitting the dog he'd trained bit the wrong child, he dropped his eyes. "What do you want?" he asked. And there it was, the power shift. I closed the folder, stood up slowly. Too late for what I wanted. What I want now is for you to watch what happens when loyalty isn't in the policy manual. Brandon, cocky, twitching, probably still drunk from the night before, finally exploded. "You can't do this. This is industrial sabotage." It's when I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the tiny flash drive I'd kept silent about. "Sabotage?" I echoed, holding it up. "This little guy here contains a 6-year refined network of reroutes, efficiency hacks, contract loopholes, and regional contingency plans. The thing you tried to fire. The thing you tried to steal." Charles lunged for it. I pulled it back with a smile. "Nope." And then I walked out, past the boardroom, past the stunned interns, past the security guard who gave me the world's slowest, most satisfying nod. Down the elevator, across the street, into a waiting car with tinted windows. Inside, Richard Wexler, waiting, grinning. "You get what you came for?" he asked. I placed the flash drive on his palm. "No," I said. "I got everything." Wexler didn't say a word. He just held the flash drive like it was the holy grail wrapped in plutonium. Outside, across the street, more HQ looked like it was bleeding. Suits pacing. Phones pressed to ears. HR dragging rolling chairs across the marble lobby like battlefield stretchers. 23 resignations, 9 vendor defections. A logistics system gutted and reborn in my back pocket. "I assume it's all there?" Wexler finally asked. "Everything but the stapler I was accused of weaponizing." He chuckled, slow and dangerous. "I'll send flowers to their funeral." But I wasn't smiling. "Celebrate yet," I said. "Brandon's a dumbass, yeah, but Charles. He's not just going to take this on the chin." And I was right. Because 2 hours later, just as I was touring Logie Corps' ops floor, glass walls, frictionless design, screens humming with actual efficiency, my phone buzzed. Unknown caller I almost didn't answer. But curiosity, she's a spiteful mistress. "Is this Daniel?" The voice was gravel-soaked in whiskey and shame. "Charles, I want to talk." Stepped into an empty office, shut the door. "Now you want to talk?" A long exhale. Like he was trying to suck the pride back into his lungs. I made a mistake. "Brandon, he thought he was being proactive." "Proactive?" I said. "He deleted shipping manifests, Charles. He rewired your vendor pipeline through a fake company registered to his own name. That's not proactive. That's a Ponzi scheme wrapped in a participation trophy. Another silence. I'll fire him, Charles said. Permanently, I'll clean house. You come back, take full control of logistics. C-level, title of your choice. Rewrite your contract. I laughed, not a happy one. You're dangling steak after burning the cow, Charles. I'll double what Wexler's offering. And there it was. The desperation. I paused. Not because I was tempted, because this moment needed to breathe. Let the humiliation fester. I'm not coming back, I said finally. But I'll do you one mercy. He perked up. What's that? I smiled into the receiver. I won't go public. The silence on the other end was thick, heavy. You have NDAs, he finally muttered. I have morals, I corrected. But more importantly, I have leverage. What's left of your board doesn't need to know that your son tried to hijack the company's spine. They'll just think you lost control, which you did. Quietly. He started to say something else, but I hung up. I wasn't bluffing. Because 5 minutes later, Wexler's assistant came in with a folder. Mr. Wexler thought you'd want to see this. Inside, screenshots, emails, access logs, everything Brandon touched, everything he tried to reroute fake. Wexler's legal team had already begun mapping it out, just in case. Insurance, the real kind. And right there at the bottom of the stack, an email Brandon sent to an offshore consultant. Once I get the old guy out, the ops system is ours. My dad won't know until Q4. Lol. Lol, huh? You ever see a man accidentally write his own obituary? Because I just did. By Monday morning, the obituary was signed, sealed, and buried under 6 feet of corporate silence. Charles never called again, but someone else did. A junior partner from Whitmore's board, nervous, stuttering, the kind of guy who probably wore wool suits in July. He asked, politely, if I'd be willing to clarify certain events for internal documentation. I said, politely, go to hell. Because by then, the war was over. And I hadn't just won, I'd erased the battlefield. Let me paint the picture. While Whitmore scrambled to Frankenstein their systems back together, Wexler and I were already 3 moves ahead. I wasn't just integrating my infrastructure into Logi Core's architecture. I was rewriting it, layer by layer. Smart routing, predictive analytics, vendor flex frameworks, tools Whitmore never even knew existed were now humming quietly inside Logi Core's veins. And the 22 I brought with me, they weren't employees anymore. They were commanders. Every one of them got a raise. Full benefits. Corner offices where they used to have closets. I even made sure Marcus from security was brought in as our new logistics security advisor. Guy used to work 12-hour night shifts next to a flickering vending machine. Now he's got stock options and a damn espresso bar. Wexler didn't just trust me, he invested in me. And with every shipment we nailed, every vendor who called to say this is smoother than anything we had before, I could feel the tide shifting. One by one, Whitmore's clients started calling us. But here's where it gets really poetic. 10 days after the Great Purge, Brandon held a press conference in a rented coworking space, with a borrowed suit and eyes that looked like they'd just discovered what humility tastes like and didn't like the flavor. He tried to spin it, called himself an innovator misunderstood by legacy minds, said he was building a new kind of logistics experience for the modern era, claimed to have raised private capital, but he didn't fool anyone. Because just 2 hours after his speech, Wexler forwarded me an email from one of our newest clients. A big one, national retailer, worth 7 figures in annual freight. The subject line, just saw Brandon's circus. Thank you for not being clowns. And in that moment, sitting in my glass-walled office with the skyline burning gold behind me, I felt it, not revenge, not even pride. Something deeper. The kind of stillness that comes when you know you buried your enemy with facts, not fury. There was one final thread to pull. One more surprise. And I'd been saving it just for Charles. Tuesday, 6:17 a.m. I stood outside Charles Whitmore's country club, golf shirt pressed, coffee in hand, watching a dozen Teslas hum quietly into valet. He didn't know I was coming. I wanted it that way. The board was meeting here today. Off-site strategic realignment, corporate speak for who gets fired next. I had no interest in the menu or the dress code. Just one item of business left on my list. I walked past security like I still owned the place. Nobody stopped me. Nobody even blinked. Probably figured I was someone's consultant. Technically, they weren't wrong. Charles was on the terrace, seated with 3 board members, talking through clenched teeth. His back was to me. I waited until he laughed, thin, forced, pathetic, laid the folder on the table like a surgeon presenting an organ. He turned. Froze. Inside the folder, a printed offer. Not mine, theirs. A merger proposal from one of Whitmore's largest international vendors, signed, sealed, and addressed to me, Logie Corps' new director of global supply integration. The vendor was pulling out of Whitmore permanently and transferring their $48 million annual contract to us. Charles's hand trembled as he read. One of the board members, older woman, silver hair, sharp as broken glass, leaned over, skimmed the page, and whistled low. "You're bleeding out, Charles," I said, voice calm as a scalpel. "And the guy who used to stitch your arteries just sold you the gauze." He opened his mouth, maybe to beg, maybe to bark. Didn't matter. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "This isn't vengeance. This is evolution. You built a throne and handed it to a fool. I built a system, handed it to the future." Then I turned, walked away, and left him sitting there, white as powdered sugar, surrounded by suits who suddenly weren't on his side anymore. As I drove off, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Charles was still frozen, still staring at the folder like it might bite him. Brandon was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in a sauna, Googling how to fix a ruined reputation. And me? I rolled down the window. Let the wind take the past with it. No flames, no bullets, no lawsuits. Just silence. And the sound of a dynasty quietly collapsing behind me.